Hello, and welcome to Conversations, bringing the world into your living room from the JCC of Metro Detroit's Cultural Arts Department. My name is David Silverman, and I work at the JCC of Metro Detroit. Tonight is the next installment of our ongoing series, and we hope you'll continue to join us for interesting conversations in the future as well. While you're here at our YouTube channel, please subscribe, like this video, and click the notification bell so you always know when we add a new video or live virtual event. Another great way to stay up to date with our is through our website to look at other events, festivals, and our Facebook group. And you can see that at culturalarts.jccdet.org. Now, if you're watching from your computer or smart TV, you can add your questions and comments in the comment box below. You can also text your questions and comments to the number seen on your screen. The JCC of Metro Detroit is proud to provide you with free virtual events during these challenging times, but we could use your help. If you enjoyed this program or other cultural arts presentations, please consider making a donation or becoming a cultural arts patron at our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org. Your support goes directly to the Cultural Arts Department and helps us to continue to produce high-quality, innovative content. And now to this evening's event. Our host for the Conversation series is Allen Maniker. A native of Detroit, Allen graduated from the Juilliard School with a BFA in dance and went on to perform with Bat Door of Israel and many prestigious dance companies in New York and beyond. After finishing his performing career, he returned home to earn an MD degree from Wayne State University of Medicine. He recently retired as chairman of neurosurgery at Mount Sinai Beth Israel Hospital and professor of neurosurgery at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He currently works as a docent at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he's on the board of the Martha Hill Dance Fund, as well as the chairman of the board of the Steps Beyond Foundation.
Good evening. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this ongoing series, Conversations, which is sponsored by the Jewish Community Center of Metropolitan Detroit. I'm Allen Maniker, and I'm going to be your host. Now, I want to ask, is there anybody that really doesn't love the magic of the movies? I think not. And especially in these challenging times when we're not even having the movie theaters available to us, I think we miss it even more. A large part of the magic of the movies depends upon the set designer. The set establishes the time and the location where the action takes place, and also sets the mood and the ambiance of the various scenes that we're seeing. One of the most important people in this is the set designer, and that is the person that's part of the team that designs the set. And here tonight, we have Jim Hewitt, set designer for film and television, an Art Directors Guild award-winning designer. And in some of the promotional material that we did, there was a little bit of inaccuracy. So I want to read exactly his credits because they're just so impressive. He's worked on such projects as Spider-Man Far From Home, The Life of Pi, directed by Ang Lee, Lincoln, directed by Steven Spielberg, The Hunger Games franchise, Us, directed by Jordan Peele, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, The Avengers, Live by Night, directed by Ben Affleck, Feud, Betty and Joan, and many more. His upcoming credits include Season 2 of The Mandalorian, based on the Star Wars universe, The Jungle Cruise, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt, and Yellowstone, starring Kevin Costner. I'm really thrilled to welcome Jim Hewitt, who, in full disclosure, is the husband of my niece, Lisa, and the father of my great niece. So tonight it's all in the family. Please welcome Jim Hewitt. Hey, hello. Jim.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well, Alan. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. So I got your credits right this time around?
Picks are perfect. Yep.
Perfect. So, Jim, were you always interested in a career in the movie business?
It's really funny. Actually, no, I didn't even know there was much of a career in the movie industry for design. I was always thinking about architecture as my direction, and that was my focus all through 5 years of schooling. And when I was getting close to the end of my stay at Cal Poly, I started kind of searching around to see what it was going to be like working in an architectural firm, and had an opportunity to move into an entertainment job, and I kind of never looked back at that point. It was really kind of an eye-opening experience. It's very related. It's directly related to architecture in terms of drafting and model building and elevations and drawings and so forth. But it's a little bit of a different twist. You're kind of focusing on something completely different. But it was pretty much when I was graduating when I kind of had a realization that, architecture is awesome and wonderful, but it just didn't quite fit what I was hoping for. And I found it in theme parks, film, and TV.
Wow. So wait, so you grew up in Hanford, California. Where is Hanford?
Hanford's in the Central Valley of California. It's up by Fresno. It's about 3.5 hours north of Los Angeles, and so it's an agrarian society for the most part, but a great place to be born and raised. And it was when I was getting ready to go to college that I moved out and moved down to Los Angeles.
But so you grew up around farms? Yeah.
I mean, my family, we weren't involved with agriculture. My parents were school teachers, but it was a good majority of the people that I went to school with were working back at home on big family ranches and farms and
wow.
So it was quite a change.
So I'm curious then. So you transitioned into working into the movie business with a degree in architecture. Are there degrees in set design specifically?
I'm not that familiar with, honestly, how many, what colleges would actually have set design. When it comes to becoming a set designer, most of the people that move into that field come from architecture by way of, drafting and understanding how you would build, structures. The other angle that people come into it from is theater design. And so probably that would be the closest link would be if you're getting a theater design degree for sets. That would probably be the closest way in. I mean, there are colleges that do study or that do teach set design, USC, UCLA, the American Film Institute, a whole series of them, New York University. But I believe they do tend to focus more on production design, which actually is the position that runs the art department. So that's kind of the head or the top level in the art department would be the production designer. Mm-hmm. And that's where you come up with the blue sky idea, the original design. But once it has to be implemented from a conceptual phase into a practical phase, that's when it goes through the set designer. And
so you report to an art director.
Yeah. So really, how the art department is structured, you have a production designer that's at the top of the department. And that person answers to the director, to the producers, to the studio, to the director of photography. They hammer out the design, they hammer out the budget, they figure out how much is available for each set. And the production designer presents the idea either through photographs or through having an illustrator that is hired onto the team to draw the pictures or the image, particular scene, and the production designer gets it sold, and then it moves down to the art director, who disperses the information amongst all the different departments. So that means you have set decorating, you have props, you have special effects, you have construction, you have visual.
Okay, wait 1 second, because I want to be sure I get this. So you have the director, you have the production designer.
Correct.
Yes, and then the art director.
Correct.
And then the set designer.
Correct. And what happens for the set designer, is really in charge of anything that is built. So the information truly flows through the art director, but really is directly to the set designer, and the set designer is responsible for converting a conceptual idea into a real set, a real environment. And any questions the set designer might have will flow back up through the art director, because the art director is really spreading a wide net across all the different departments. So really the communication tends to be through the art director, but many times to the production designer, to make sure that the look that was bought off on is still being conceived and produced. So
do you ever get to talk directly to the director?
That's not really in my orbit. There are times when I have, like for instance on Life of Pi, I was having direct conversations with Ang Lee over the design of the part of the project I was working on. But each art department is set up a little differently. If you're working on a TV series, there may not be art directors actually even on the project. And it's a set designer working directly with the production designer. Other times, the art director is so busy working on 3 other, sets at location that the art director says, "Hey, production designer, set designer, work directly with the production designer to figure this out and get all your answers." So it's really kind of an undulating kind of relationship between the production designer and the art director. It's never a locked-in deal. It's kind of an amalgamation of different people too.
Right. So how did you end up on your first job?
It's really interesting. So when I graduated, when I was finishing college, I got a lead from Miramax, hearing that they were open to bringing on an intern, which is more production. And I moved into a production office where I was reading scripts. I was a fish out of water. And at that point I moved from contacts there into a special effects house, where I was working internships at a special effects house while I was completing my degree at Cal Poly. I finished my thesis project at the special effects house, and it was really trying to convince architecture professors that set design in film and TV is very relatable to architecture. And I was trying to prove that point. It was from finishing that project that got me a job with Universal theme parks, because they were gearing up with a big project in Florida called Islands of Adventure. And that was back in the mid-90s. That project brought in a slew of production designers, art directors, illustrators from film and TV. Kind of all the heads, all the biggest in the business were working on that project. So I was in an office building that had over 400 major designers on all of these projects, and it was through that job I got my contacts to move into a whole series of TV shows that eventually moved me into film. So,
and what was your first film?
My first film was Oh boy.
Oh, that one. It must have been a huge hit.
Yeah,
It'll come to you.
Oh, it'll come.
It'll come to you. But I want to, so then while that percolates in the back of your mind, you shared with me some of the skill sets that a set designer needs to have. And so I want to share my screen again.
Actually,
because
it was G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra was my first. It was the first of the G.I. Joe series.
See, I told you it would come to you. Okay, so let's share my screen again.
Okay.
And here, you know what you look like. But so, first of all, so the first of the 5 skill sets that you talked about was research.
Yes.
And deciphering research information to apply to a particular set is critical.
Yeah.
Sometimes the research material does not fully relate, or the necessary measurements at a location are not accessible. This requires the set designer to think outside the box to get his or her answers. And I want to share this because you said the Lincoln image board. And I first got to say, Jim, these drawings are absolutely extraordinary. Can you take us through them?
Sure.
And what's the story behind them, and why does this relate to research?
Okay. So yeah, just like that statement says, there's a skill involved in trying to pull information from what you can to be able to build a set. In this particular case on Lincoln, a historical project that happened in the late 1800s, and a real boat, the actual boat, which was the River Queen, it doesn't exist anymore. It came into operation in 1864, and it went out of commission in 1911. And so what I had to work from was, if you look in the lower left corner, the photograph of the River Queen, I had about 3 of those photos available to work from. I also was able to pull from the National Maritime Museum drawings of a sister boat of the River Queen. So that gave me a beginning that gave me elevations and a plan of the boat. So if you see in the upper right-hand corner, that would be an elevation of the boat. The one problem was the drawings that I received from the museum, from the archives, the boat was about 50 feet shorter than the River Queen. And so what I had to do is go back to the photographs to find a photo that showed a pure side image or side photo of the boat that I could get a measurement, a rough percentage measurement of the distance from the center of the wheel to the nose or to the bow of the ship, and then center of the wheel to the stern of the ship, to figure out where I could add an extra 50 feet to that drawing to try and get it as accurate as possible. So that was the first step, is to figure out my overall envelope. And then from there, if you look at the painting that's in the lower center of that image board, that's a very famous painting that was, it's called the Peacemakers, and it was painted in 1868, which was 3 years after that famous meeting that Lincoln had with Ulysses S. Grant on the River Queen. It was from that painting I was able to pull all of my measurements. Now, when you're a set designer, you understand the scale of people, the size of people. There are certain dimensions that come natural to the drafting process, and that is every seat is 18 inches off the ground. And if you were to measure from someone sitting on a seat, on a normal seat, to the top of their head is normally about 4'6" tall. With those dimensions in mind, I was able to take measurements from the people seated in this painting to figure top of head is 4'6", and from that I could figure that's about halfway. That was about mid mark to the ceiling height from the floor. So that gave me, a height of ceiling at about 7 foot, 7'6". I believe I ended up settling at 7'6" for overall height, and there could reverse engineer back into the size of the windows that you see in that painting. That gave me...
Oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
who knew?
Yeah, it's
Who
insane.
knew? This is so complex.
It really is. It really is. And it's amazing what you can pull from just a couple of images. So from those dimensions I was able to now go back to my original drawings in the upper right corner and figure out my heights of floors on the boat. Because I needed to cross-check the original drawings to make sure I'm going to be accurate. Because the last thing I want to do when these drawings are released to construction to be built is for them to be built and find out that they're too short or too tall when they put actual actors up there on that boat, and it doesn't work scale-wise or height-wise. It's going to come back on me, and I am the one responsible for that error. So there's a lot of pressure on me to make sure that I get it right. So I'm double, triple, quadruple checking everything I do.
Jim, I'm gonna, if you want to finish one remark, because I want to get through all 5 of your boards. So I want to move on. But is there one thing to conclude with this one you wanted to say?
Well, one other thing I'll say is about the photos that are in the middle of the building of that boat. What they did is they brought in the hull of a cargo ship, of a freighter, and they stripped the top and they rebuilt this set on top of it in Nantucket, I believe is where it was. And so they rebuilt this actually at the original location.
And do you recall how many minutes of screen time did this set actually have?
I didn't actually document that, but it was less than a minent. But
so
it was a major point in the film, and so that gives credence to the set and also gives value to the set, because I believe it was in all the trailers as well. So it really becomes a driving image, and they knew that.
Sure. Yeah. But now we're beginning to get the idea why a movie theater ticket costs $15, right? Okay, so here's 2. Collaboration. Many times the set designer becomes the information hub to the different creative departments when designing an action sequence, because they generate the plans, elevations, sections, details to the different departments. Set designers tend to be deeply involved with special effects, visual effects, stunts, set decoration, transportation, and construction. And you give us an example. This is from The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1, the Rebel hovercraft.
Yeah, so this was...
So again, these are your drawings, right?
That's correct.
Amazing, just beautiful.
Thank you, thank you. This one was a real doozy. This was a completely different... I've never worked on a ship before. Even the ship earlier, the Lincoln ship. I never worked on a ship. I've never worked on an airplane. I'm an architect by trade, so this is foreign to me, and that's one thing I'll say up front. You get used to in this industry is you're doing something that you've never done before, which can give you heart attacks, because you're thrown into the mix and you got to figure it out and you got to run. When you hit the ground, you're running. In this particular set, the illustrator actually created and designed the exterior of the ship and got a buy-off from the director and the production designer and everyone else. So the upper left corner from Nathan Schroeder is the illustrator. He's a phenomenal illustrator, one of the best in the industry. He designed the exterior of this hovercraft. And to give you context, this is the hovercraft that Katniss, the Jennifer Lawrence character, flew into the Capitol to rescue PETA. So from this exterior shell, which was all digital at all times, even into the final shots on the film, I had to reverse engineer the exterior of the ship and create an interior for the ship. And so how do you about that was new to me. Luckily, that illustrator, Nathan, supplied to me a 3D model of a rough shell of the entire ship. And so understanding computers and knowing a 3D program that I could pull it into what I knew, and pulled a bunch of section cuts A section cut would be, if you look in the lower right corner, that.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like you've frozen there for a moment. Hopefully you'll come back, because I can't certainly explain what's going on in this storyboard. Jim, come back. Through the magic of movies, can you reappear? He seems very frozen, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, well, maybe what I'll do is and now it looks like he's left. Maybe what I'll do is go on to the next slide that I was going to show, which is another skill set, which is called technical knowledge. Understanding how buildings, kitchen cabinets, windows, doors, etc. are built is a must. Any set representing a destroyed building from an explosion, earthquake, hurricane, flood, fire, war, etc., reveals how the building was built and needs to be designed accordingly. It is the set designer's job to know that information. Okay, and here's what he was going to show. And I have no way of talking about this. But here he is. He's back.
I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry about that.
Through the magic of so Jim, I've moved on to your Without a Trace storyboard. Can you tell us and fill us in about that? This is
on
technical knowledge.
Yeah, on Without a Trace, this is interesting. When it comes to set design, you have to know inside and out how a building is actually built. You need to understand what areas are brick, what areas are concrete, how you actually build a wall. The reason why is when you're working on a set that has a catastrophe, let's say a flood or a hurricane that comes through or a fire, and it destroys the building, you're seeing the guts of that building. You're seeing the bones of how it's built. So someone on the set, someone has to understand how that building is built. That's why architects tend to move into set design, because they have an inherent knowledge of how buildings are built. The second thing that's really, there are multiple technical aspects to design that are important to know for set designers. One is how it's built. Secondly is how a natural disaster can destroy a building. If a fire happens in a building, everything that is made of wood will burn, but all the brick and all the stone will stay standing. However, if it's an earthquake, all the stone elements will fall, but the wood won't. If it's a hurricane, parts that are not aerodynamic, say the roof, will be ripped off. You might have something, I don't know, a car or furniture that might fly across and break a wall or something like that. So understanding how buildings decompose, how they break down, is part of the study as well for set designers.
So Jim, let me ask, are we looking at all of these photographs here from the set, or are some of these real?
Okay, this is from the set, and that was going to be the third thing I was going to mention is for a set designer, the third part of the technical aspect is to know how to cheat to the camera. So this is on the Warner Brother backlot. If you look in the upper left corner, this is an area of the backlot that is called the jungle. Now, the backlot has multiple environments. They're exteriors usually. It's a small American town could be one environment. A jungle is another environment. New York Street could be a third environment. All of those exist at Warner Brothers. So we are in the jungle area, and this is actually a swimming pool that is about 100-foot diameter. When it's filled with water, the water is 3 feet deep. So what we had to do is recreate Hurricane Katrina in the 9th Ward. But to be able to fit multiple buildings into a 100-foot diameter swimming pool requires you to think outside the box. So we had to reduce, what we figured we could do is reduce the building sizes by 30%, because we knew that everyone we knew that the scene was going to be water that's at about 8 feet in the air, 8 feet high. And so to cheat that image, cheat that height, we basically cut the lower section of the building off and dropped everything down into the swimming pool. So we were only showing about a 6 foot tall, building. And all the actors that were in the swimming pool needed to act on their knees or laying down in the water to act as if they were in 8 feet of water. So, and knowing that we were only going to be seeing head, there was no scale reference to be able to compare the reduction in the size of the buildings to really, destroy the cheat that we had. So that's how we were able to cheat it. And knowing it's a jungle and we're in the 9th Ward in Louisiana where it's barren, how in the world do we get around that? Well, we decided we'd shoot at night. So all we had to do was highlight only the important elements that we wanted to see on camera, and all the rest of the trees went away.
Wow.
And so, we had smoke machines. If you see in the center left image there, we had smoke machines. We had fans. We even had a crane that craned over the trees that are in the back of the image in the upper left corner, that craned over with a big boom arm that had sprinklers on it that shot, through a fire hose, water as if it was this huge hurricane that was happening at the time. And you can see in the lower left corner.
Jim, let me interrupt. Sorry. Jim, Are you ever on set when they're filming?
I do when it comes to interesting sets like this. I will definitely run back, but this was late at night after dinner, this is when I was, we were early in our marriage, and I was able to get back and look at it. And it was such a unique set that I wanted to be back to look at it and see it. So, And
let me also ask, have there ever been times when you've designed the set and then you see it in the movie theater and you're like completely surprised at the way it looks? Or do you pretty much have in your mind's eye, this is the way it's going to look, and then it does look like that?
It's 90% of the time I know exactly what it's going to look like, because I've spent so much time. I mean, you got to think about that. A set designer is thinking about every single detail. Set designer needs to know how every window is built, every door is built. If you're dealing with the side of a ship or some futuristic scene that deals with a lot of rivets on a metal surface, I'm spacing out every single rivet. Because you gotta know that when it comes to a film versus television is a small screen, although that's starting to change now. So when you see something small, like let's say a rivet on a bulkhead of a ship, on a TV show, it's the size of a pin, the head of a pin. But on a film, it's the size of a quarter. So it's big and everyone sees it. So, the magic is in the details. And so the set designer is focusing on all of those elements.
Right. But so then when you see it on the big screen in the movie theater, do you ever sit back and go, not bad? Or do you feel like you notice all of the little things that, oh, maybe I should have done this different, or I could have done that better?
There are both of those feelings that come across. Many times I do feel really good about it. There are times when I said I could have changed this or that about it. But I think what's actually most magical about seeing the work is knowing that I'm the first layer of the information, and then when set decorating comes in and puts furniture in it, and you have visual effects that comes in, and they may add a background to it outside the windows or whatnot, then their expertise really brings in the final touches, and that's where the magic really happens. And so I really enjoy seeing what all the other departments add to the design. My hard design is pretty much what it is, and I know exactly what I'm going to see, and I'm happy with that usually. But it's magical to see the rest of the team working on it.
Cool. Okay, so now we're at number 4, spatial reasoning. Since the set designer creates all documents construction builds from, he or she is responsible for making sense of the design and making sure it works for the shot. Many times the design changes due to what the set designer discovers during the design process. So, and you said here, the Green Hornet, the Sentinel newspaper lobby. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, so the Green Hornet. So this was a big one with Sony. And it was Seth Rogen that was kind of starring in this one, and he was one of the producers on it, so it was a big deal for him. So they put a lot of money into this show, or into this film. Now, the bottom right corner, highlighted in green, is a model that I built at the very beginning of this particular set. And to give you an idea what the description of what happens in this set is, you can kind of see with these images. The Green Hornet, the Black Beauty, which is a huge Lincoln Continental car, a huge boat of a car, drives into the newspaper Sentinel lobby and crashes into the elevator, and then is lifted in the elevator. Oh, well, I'm sorry, it crashes into the elevator, and then Seth's character, Britt, rolls down the window, pushes the button to the elevator to go up, and the elevator goes up with the car in it, and when it hits the ceiling, it severs the back of the car off and falls to the floor. So that's the scene. And so it started with the model in the bottom right corner, and that's what the production designer had in mind in terms of how the set would be built. You'll notice,
Jim, how big is that model?
That model is about 2 feet by 2 feet.
Okay.
Inside. And so I roughed in the size of the car so we could see the relationship to it. And you'll notice that the elevator shaft is embedded into the walls, where if you look at the photo above of the final set, the elevator shaft is out in the middle of the lobby. The reason for that was for two things. One, there are no pedestrian elevators that fit the size of the width of this particular car. This car is 6'9" wide. There are no elevators that have doors that are that wide. And one thing you're very sensitive to as a set designer is how to not give away the scale, any of your cheats you do not want to give away. And one of the quickest way to give that away is for people to be standing in front of a door, because everyone can recognize a door, recognize the height of the door, recognize the width of a door. And when you put a person in front of that, you see the scale. And so we had to get rid of that. So that was the first thing we needed to address. And secondly was when the car, if it were to go through the doors of the elevator key button is now behind the car. So if you reach out the window of the car, you can't reach the keys of the elevator because you've passed it, if that makes sense. So what we had to do is we had to pull the elevator shaft, or I proposed pulling the elevator shaft into the lobby, rotating it 90 degrees. So you're no longer relating the doors to the people. You're at an oblique angle from where the camera is, so you can cheat it. And then secondly, you can widen the elevator shaft to receive the width of that car. So when it crashes into that elevator shaft, you also need to figure out the nose of that car needs to embed deep enough into the elevator shaft that the character that's in the front seat can reach out and be in the perfect position to touch that button to the elevator. So that also is a cheat.
So Jim, can I ask, is there ever a time when it becomes so complex that they say we should do this computer generated than as a set instead of a set?
Yeah.
That
happens. But that doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't always solve the problem, because there's only so much cheating you can do before you give away give away the gag, and the audience is smarter than ever these days, especially with high def TV and films that are coming out and everything shot on high def. There's very little wiggle room for cheating. And so going back to the basics of camera shooting and basics of cheating of, kind of original approaches become kind of a safeguard. And so building things in real time and real scale help you in these situations. It's very easy to say, oh, we'll just figure that out in post, in visual effects. But then you hit a snag in visual effects and you can't, and then you're too late. And then you can't fix a problem that was avoidable.
Got it. Let's go on to your last one.
Yep.
Storytelling. There is always a parallel story created for the set that goes along with the script. To make sets believable, we create a visual history that reflects the personality of the character in the scene. And here you have the Lone Ranger board.
Yeah. So Lone Ranger was another big film, and that was going to be Johnny Depp's next franchise after Pirates of the Caribbean. And it was a Jerry Bruckheimer film with Disney, and so they had a ton of money for this one. It was like a $200 million film, $250 million film. It was huge. And those are fun to work on because as a set designer, your budgets are higher and you can really get into the details. Now, it's important to know that when it comes to film sets, and film in particular, what's exciting about it is that everyone has a story to tell, and that also goes for the set designer and the art department. There is a parallel story that happens here. This set in particular, which was called Red's Traveling Show, that's the upper set, this that you see in the upper section, and the photograph on the left, the kind of the red interior, that's all Red's Interior Travel Show. The lower one is a different set called the Livery Stable. If you look at Red's Traveling Show, that is based on the Hell on Wheels historical kind of move of kind of tents, kind of like a tent city of all the workers that worked on the Transcontinental Railroad. And they had this colony that followed the construction of the railroad, and it was filled with a bunch of bars and eateries and brothels and that type of thing. And this particular set was a bar / brothel / entertainment hub. As a set designer, what we had to convey was a set that could be broken down and put onto train cars and moved to the next location. And we had to do it within the confines of the architecture of the day. Construction practices back in the 1800s was much different than in today's world. This was set back in 1868. And so we had a bunch of, what did we have available to us? We had a blacksmith that built, could build any kind of metal bracket we needed. We had a lot of railroad spikes to work with as well. So you can see kind of in that green highlighted area, what I'm showing there is a coupling of a metal bracket with railroad ties to communicate what they had available to be able to build this transportable tent, if you will, of a permanent semi-structural, architecture. The lower section shows a livery stable, and in this particular set, the script said two characters are walking in front of a livery stable and they're communicating. It's an old beat up livery stable is basically what is communicated in the script, and that's all the information I had to go with. So we decided that, okay, well, let's give it a program. Let's say this livery stable's been around for 20 years. And we've had decades of horses living in this livery stable. And knowing that this is set in Arizona and it's hot, it would be very hot in this little box that this horse is trapped in. So I took the approach that this horse would be really angry, or the horses would not be happy living in this thing. And so what would they do to show their anger? But they would go through and they would start gnawing off all of the edges of the openings to this to the stable. And you can kind of see in the highlighted kind of orange circle there where I'm starting to bring character to the building. Also, with prevailing winds, there would be a racking of the building, and you would also have the horse probably kicking boards out of the building, and it would be replaced by the owner of that building. And so you start to see a lot of weathering. It depends on which side of the building is sun facing, which side sun bleached, which side isn't. All of those details land in the set designer's purview and needs to be addressed. So that's where you get into storytelling.
Wow, terrific. Terrific. So research, collaboration, technical knowledge, spatial reasoning, and storytelling.
That's
How
right.
terrific.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't part of your scenes, but I wanted to just do quickly this one. And in the interest of time, we only have 1 or 2 minutes to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'd love, tell us about this.
Okay, so this is Hunger Games Catching Fire. It's the observation car, and you can see in the photo in the upper photo, that's the final image that you saw on screen, and the one below shows the green screen that's outside the window. And so that's Katniss there, sitting and kind of getting ready for the shot. So that's what she saw in the scene, and it was visual effects afterwards that laid in this scene that you see in the upper section. The lower image shows what it looked like on stage outside the set. It's all just raw wood, and it's not unfinished. And you can see all the cabling, where all the electronics, because all the lights inside, as you see, are practical. There's and on the right side are all a number of the drawings that I did for this particular set. To give it movement, it was kind of a what do they call, a lazy kind of version, where it was on rollers, this entire set. So people can kind of move it, shift it from outside to kind of move the set to give it a little bit of movement as if it's traveling. That's
wonderful. Really wonderful, Jim. So Jim, have you ever had one where you've had to say, "Oh, this can't be done"?
You never want to say that. And as a set designer, what becomes the challenge is, how do you make something that's really what you first think is unattainable? How do you actually make it attainable? And there are many ways that you can do that. But basically, to answer your question, you always give an alternative. This is what you want. I'll draw out what they want, but then I will show where the problems are and say,
right.
If you start to shoot this, you're going to have a clearance issue with your door. You open it up, you're going to slam it into whatever piece. And so we need to move the door over, or, whatever.
Now, have you ever had a project that was really difficult, like pulling teeth to get done?
Well, the Hunger Games one that you just saw earlier was probably my most difficult set that I ever worked on, because it was so unfamiliar to me, that style of architecture. It was really hard. I was relying on the people around me to get it done. And it was so integral to all the different departments, like visual effects and special effects and stunts and set decorating, it becomes a collaborative effort at that point. You rely on the art director around you and the other departments to help you along. I do a lot of communication with construction. That's really the people that answer to me are construction. And it's my job to, again, take a blue sky idea and kind of crunch it into real dimensions and real materials that can now go to construction. And I won't, my biggest fear is to be laughed off the stage by construction saying, there's no way we can build this. It's impossible. I have to have knowledge of what construction needs, but I also have to have knowledge of what the production designer needs.
Now, how come they get to say it's impossible, we can't do it, but you don't get to say that?
That's the axe I have to grind. I mean, I'm
going to talk to someone about that.
I know. I need to.
Now, but the flip side of the question, Jim, is have you had a project that was a piece of cake? It just rolled off your pen like no problem?
I would say kind of most of anything that's dealing with historical architecture and actual buildings really is kind of what I was trained for, where my passion is. And so really understanding how ornate, historical, old English architecture or old Americana architecture, that's really kind of in my wheelhouse, I would say. And so, any of those sets, or if it's a war-torn city, is something that's really, passionate for me. Now, everything I do, if you may have noticed, is pencil. There are two different types of set designers. You have digital set designers and pencil set designers. Pencil set designers tend to work towards more decrepit, kind of more textured and aged sets. So if you're dealing with Mayan ruins in the jungle, or that are overgrown with trees and shrubs and broken war-torn cities or hurricanes, or anything where you get a lot of texture, you get a lot of aging, get a lot of settling, pencil works really well for that, because you get into the nitty-gritty of the actual illustration of it. And so anything that's in that realm is really where I work best. Digital tends to work strongly in sleek, clean, Star Trek type sets. When you get into something like Star Wars or Mandalorian, it's kind of a merging of the two. But art departments these days tend to have both sets of set designers to do the work. And there can be a handoff between digital and pencil to be able to get the best of both worlds.
Wow, because that's great that you answered that, because someone actually asked the question, how did the collaboration work with computer and IT teams for Mandalorian and Life of Pi? I assume you had to have multiple meetings to work that out then, yeah?
Yeah, it really benefits you. If you're a pencil set designer, it benefits you to know 3D programs. You don't have to know them inside and out, and there's really no way you can be on the same level as someone who does it, all the time digitally, because you're kind of splitting your time between being on the pencil, on the board, as we would say, and keeping up with the digital needs to be current. So, but having a base knowledge in how to bring digital 3D models into the computer and to be able to pull the information you need to be able to do the drawings is really essential in today's world.
So are you mostly working to match them, or are they working to match you?
Usually it's neither. It really depends on each project. Each set designer is assigned a certain project, and you see it all the way through. But that all kind of goes up in flames once, the set changes. Let's say one of the actors gets sick and can't shoot their shots, and it completely scrambles the shooting order. And or you have 5 days of rain and you can't be out shooting, so now suddenly all the sets that are indoors now come to the forefront, and it scrambles again the shooting order. Then suddenly your set takes the back seat, and then the other one that was the back seat becomes in the forefront. Well, I'm the one available to work on that digital set, but that other digital set designer's not available. Now suddenly I'm taking over that. I mean, it can become chaos very quickly, but you get used to it, and you really become, it lends itself to people that enjoy the challenge of getting through kind of an insurmountable challenge.
So when you get hired for a job, Jim, do you know how much time you're going to be working? Like, is it like, okay, this is a 6-week project, this is a 4-week project. Yeah. So how much time do you end up spending on any particular movie?
It depends. On the Hunger Games, I was on that since we were doing both a Mockingjay 1 and 2, basically 2 films together in one. I was on it for 9 months. But on most shows, most films, 6 months, maybe 3 months. It really kind of depends. Depending on the art department, you might have 9, 10 set designers on it. You may have as many as 1. I mean, it really depends on the project.
So are you a freelancer?
Yes. Yeah.
Do any of the big studios have like in-house people?
That's of yesteryear. That was back in the day. That's no longer the case. Every film.
Back in the day for me is different from back in the day for you. So when was back in the day for you?
Back in the day would be in the 60s. 70s.
Okay.
All right. When I started coming in the 90s, it was already kind of past. And everyone's independent contractors. Basically, it's a whole series of startup companies. Every single time a show begins, a new film begins, the studio will set up an LLC and will bring in a production designer, a director of photography, and a production designer. And that production designer will then hire their entire team. So you really kind of attach yourself to your superior, which for me would be an art director or a production designer. I get hired by either. I also get hired by other set designers. So you really kind of need to make friends with all of them. You're making friends with your competition because technically other set designers are your competition, but you go off of the thoughts that there's so much work available that they need to hire a second set designer, and so they're going to put your name into the hat and bring you on because you work well with them and you go to lunch with them and you have a fun time. So,
but has this awful virus cut into
sets
that are being designed?
It certainly has. However, I've been taking kind of a new approach, knowing that I have a family now. I have been taking the approach of working remote on films, and with the birthing or the beginnings of digital really taking root, productions are kind of a little more open to it. And so even pencil set designers. And so for the last 4 years, I've been working remote on all the different films that I've been working on. And so it's possible in today's world. So I've been working actually in my home office on everything.
But I more mean, Jim, in the quantity of things that are being produced. Isn't production way down given given what's going on?
Oh yeah, trying to figure out how to keep the production safe is a real challenge. I'm on Yellowstone, and they're actually shooting out of state, and they have all of their different departments are in different cities, and they all communicate via Skype and media on social media. And they have a whole protocol set up for when they put sets on stage and who's available, who can be on stage. And once things are on stage, they take everyone off. They have a COVID cleaning crew come in and clean the entire stage. And then a whole new group of people come in to actually shoot. And then once they're done, they leave. And then a whole different crew comes back in. But they are really on the cutting edge of figuring out how a business can actually run in close quarters with 100 people all on the same team working on top of each other and figuring out how to make this work. And they're getting tested 3, 4, 5 times a week. It's really, really crazy. It's really, really hard. And my hat's off to, the union to figure out, a way forward, because it really has impacted, the productions.
Wow. So one last question, Jim, because we've actually, believe it or not, talked through an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Do you have an idol set designer that you revere? And why?
I've thought about that, and to be honest, I don't have any one person that I would say is an idol. A whole series of them, and it really comes down to the experience. Because we're basically every production is a startup. You work with a different team every single production. So literally every 3 to 6 months, I'm with a new group of people. Knock on wood, as long as you're working, and I've been fortunate to be able to continue working. And so I really have been able to run across a lot of people that have been in the industry for 30 years. And I really do tend to pay special attention to the people that have been around longer than I have, because they really do know the tricks of the trade. And so my idols, if I were to say a select group, it would be, of the older generation of set designers that still are alive and well and are working in the business. Literally, when you look at my drawings, they are basically an amalgamation of 7 or 8 different set designers' techniques that I've kind of merged together into my own style. Every single show, it does change. There's little things I manipulate. Everything I work on, I tend to double check, look at again, re-look at, and as a post-mortem to see what I would have done differently. And I use that as knowledge moving forward to the next set. So hopefully, I become a little better each time. I don't know. The jury's out on that, but as long as I keep working, I use that as maybe a sign.
The work that we've looked at tonight is absolutely phenomenal. Kudos to you, really. And Jim, I know you're behind the camera kind of a guy. Yeah. I'm so glad I was able to drag you in front of the camera, because the work that you do is absolutely fascinating and so complex. I don't think any of us not in the business know exactly how complex your work is. Yeah. And it's just so impressive. And thank you for coming on and talking to me. It's been just a wonderful pleasure.
It was my pleasure. And I really appreciate you giving me some time and thinking of me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Great. Good, Jim. My pleasure. David Silverberg, back to you.
Well, thank you everyone and for joining us tonight, and a very special thank you to our guests. Our next conversation event will be on October 8th, and it will feature Wayne Hoffman, the executive editor of Tablet Magazine. You can find details on our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to make sure you never miss another event. Thank you again to our guests, and thank you so much for joining us.